Seattle voters are set to vote on two levies from Washington's largest school district, Seattle Public Schools. The levy could translate into increased spending by taxpayers towards school renovations and special education services. Western Washington reporter Spencer Polly is here to tell us more about this story. Spencer, what are the two levies in this upcoming election?
So the two levies set to be voted on in the February 11th election are the Educational Programs and Operations Levy, and you also have the Building Excellence Capital Levy. Both of these levies are expiring this year, with the district saying they are critical for necessary essential funding for school operations. So they were basically saying a lot is on the line here for Seattle voters and for students and families that rely on public schools within the city.
How much is it going to cost?
Let's Let me just break it down this way. Let's say both levies are passed. Then the total tax rate that the Seattle Public Schools district would set would be $2.12 per $1,000 of assessed property value. That means the owner of an average Seattle home would pay $1,805 per year towards the district. That's a good chunk of change here for public education within the city. Now funding. Let me just continue here. Funding from these levies go towards special education services, classroom technology, the salaries of support staff, school safety enhancements, and the capital levy goes towards school facility renovations. Seattle Public Schools is relying on taxpayers to help fund basically a lot that goes on into public education within the city of Seattle.
The school district is currently facing a budget deficit, right?
Yes, yeah. So Seattle Public Schools is facing a near $100 million budget gap. That led to the superintendent and the school board to consider consolidating schools for over the past year and a half now. Now, the number of proposed schools has dropped from 21 elementary schools down to 4, and none now. This comes after numerous teachers and parents spoke out against this. These levies, I have to note that these levies do not go towards closing this budget gap. This goes towards just funding essential school needs and not towards closing this gap. So basically, you're going to have the Seattle Public Schools school board, the superintendent still have to work to find a way to close that gap, despite this increased funding coming from these levies. Basically, the levies are just maintaining the status quo while increasing it as inflation costs continue.
Is Seattle Public Schools struggling with enrollment
I'm
amid
glad you,
this proposed levy increase?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because that's kind of the element here we're talking about with this election coming up. We're trying to fund continued school operations with these two levies, but there is something that needs to be taken into consideration by voters, and that's the district is continuing to struggle with enrollment numbers. Over the past 8 years, enrollment has dropped by 4,000 students. Now, Seattle Public Schools remains the biggest school district in Washington State, as you can expect, being the biggest city. But still, this is with the 4,000 students, loss of 4,000 students, I should say, the number of schools remains the same. That's a lot of schools, and that's just a lot more funding that goes towards it instead of maybe consolidating schools in order to save money and close that gap. The district is also being viewed negatively by parents of former students. While I was exploring some of the levy information, I noticed a survey from last month found that 66% of parents of former students were dissatisfied with the quality of education their children received from Seattle Public Schools. All that into consideration, we have to wonder, will this funding help improve statistics? Are we going to see better education services? Are students going to learn more? And that's one thing that's going to be considered, whether or not the levies pass, and they have consistently been passed and been approved by voters in the past, I should say. There's always been a strong support of the public education in the city of Seattle. So nothing is guaranteed, but it's looking like, voters could perhaps still want to support public education, especially as we're seeing the Trump administration and some of their mindset and goals within how education is run throughout the country. So we'll see. But I think that's one thing to take into consideration here.
Well, Spencer, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.